There's a phrase in medicine, when you can't connect the issues, think connective tissues. And this person might have a connective tissue disease. They might have Ehlers Danlos syndrome. Ehlers Danlos syndrome, or EDS, is a group of genetic connective tissue diseases. You can think of the connective tissue as the glue that holds your body together. When connective tissue is disrupted, you can see multiple effects across the body and a variety of symptoms. Often, at times, these can be severe and even life-threatening. There are 13 subtypes of EDS, all of which have clear genetic markers, except for the hypermobile subtype, or HEDS. Hypermobile Ehlers Danlos syndrome has challenged researchers for years, and there's no clear cause that can be tested for by a blood test or a saliva test in the clinic. HEDS affects an estimated 1 in 500 people. It causes joint hypermobility, dislocations, tendon and ligament tears, gastrointestinal issues, abnormal scarring and poor wound healing, and cardiovascular problems as well. I have experienced this firsthand as a patient with HEDS myself. When I was younger, my joint hypermobility and flexibility was an asset. I was a talented athlete, and despite the constant injuries I endured, I continued to push my body. I didn't know that this asset that gave me certain athletic advantages would later come to destroy my life. By 18 years old, my body was quite literally falling apart. The doctors and physical therapists that I saw had no idea why I was tearing muscles with minimal trauma. I quit the sports that I loved without any reason for why I was doing this or why this was happening. I hobbled across an inaccessible college campus in crutches, a walker, and with a cane. I had to drop my science labs because I was in a shoulder brace and unable to use my arm. I studied in bed, curled up with ice packs or heating pads every night because I was in too much pain at the end of the day to even sit up. I even started to think that some of my symptoms were in my head. I was 20 years old when I was diagnosed with hypermobile EDS. The average time for a patient to go until they are diagnosed is 14 years. And that's not 14 years of age, that is 14 years since the time their symptoms first became obvious. Even though there are no treatment options, early diagnosis can lead to better outcomes through preventative care. And I quickly learned that EDS doesn't care what day it shows up. And on good days, I live with the constant fear of when I will feel badly again. If I'm being honest, this disease has robbed me of getting to enjoy some of the best moments of my life. My friends and family have had to watch me struggle through countless surgeries and medical procedures while knowing there is nothing they can do to help and there is no end in sight. But the hardships that I've faced with EDS led me to this opportunity to study this disease and to help others with it and provide patients who suffer hope that there may be treatment options and easy diagnostic tests available in the future. Studying HEDS wasn't on my radar at all when I was starting my PhD. And it wasn't that I didn't want to, but I knew that there were no labs really focused on it. So without any funding for HEDS research, CHIP supported me and took on the challenge of looking for disease genes for HEDS. Other research teams had failed at this task for years, and several of them told us we probably wouldn't be able to do it. But we tried anyway. To prove a particular gene is responsible for disease, you need to do a lot more. We all have millions of base pairs changes in our DNA, and most of them aren't causing any issues. As scientists, we need to look further than just the genetics. We needed biology to support our discovery and a platform to investigate that biology. So we were able to create a mouse model using a gene editing technology known as CRISPR-Cas9. And we're able to use it as a platform to study and understand the disease progression and investigate diagnostic tools and treatment options. We also created an HEDS patient registry to identify additional mutations and genes in the larger EDS population. We have the largest lab in the world working on HEDS too. Today we have two PhD students. Today we have two PhD students, 5 interns, 1 postdoc, and 4 clinical research coordinators, all working on aspects of HEDS in the lab. But our research can only progress so far without additional funding. I dream of the day where HEDS is a straightforward diagnosis, where clinicians know the signs and symptoms, and there is a simple treatment approach available. I hope to see a debilitating and lifelong illness become a manageable one that allows individuals to live a relatively normal life. I am so grateful to work on a project that I am this passionate about and to have the opportunity to make a difference in the EDS community.
Role, trying to figure out how I was going to be in a historic position as Miss America with a chronic disease was very concerning. And my story is actually very unlike Cortney's story. I am the picture for early diagnostics and how that has allowed me to be really successful in my life because of the practitioners that were around me. I shared that. Why did I end up in this role? I asked myself that question many times. There was a reason I think that this year, in both ways, I became Miss America and someone with EDS served as a Miss America. Not only do I love the science associated with EDS, and that was very pertinent during COVID, but when you dream of being Miss America your whole life, you think of what you're gonna do that year. You think of all the places you're gonna go and the people that you're gonna meet, the parades you get to be in, that Miss America has been in for however many years. This year wasn't anything like any other year as Miss America. So I went from being that full-time person in that capacity that I was so afraid of for 3 months to not leaving my house because of COVID. And a lot of people ask me or approach me with like, I'm so sorry that your year was ruined. And I'm like, no, it's fine. It's great. I could be the virtual Miss America and I'm thrilled by that. And it made it accessible for someone who doesn't have often the capability or the stamina to be able to do that role. And it feels very odd to me that I, as someone who was so afraid of that, was handed this experience where I didn't have to endure what I was so afraid of. In my role, anytime I post about EDS, anytime that I talk about EDS, I am flooded with other EDSers that are just thrilled to have someone being able to represent our community. And that has been so rewarding because I recognize how many people have similar experiences to me and that we don't ever have to go through this alone, and that we can learn from each other, we can lean on each other, and we can really join together to be able to support our community in a very different way. And I have not seen that much excitement until I got here. And then when we talked about the research that's associated with EDS that Dr. Norris is doing, all of that energy came to a head. Everyone was thrilled to be able to see what Dr. Norris was doing, and that I was able to share that through my platforms as well as Miss America. So that's been really rewarding and very impactful for me. And I will say, as a person of science who has done research, who has background in biochemistry, who literally learned about genome-wide association studies in school and was geeked out by them, to be able to go into a lab and see where that's being used to solve problems associated with my own disease is so rewarding in so many capacities. As a Miss America, as an EDSer, and as a scientist is just thrilling for me to be able to see. And also the potential for therapies. As a pharmacy student who loves the idea of medicinal therapies for patients and how effective they can be and how they can improve qualities of life, I could never be so excited. And so it's been my pleasure to not only represent the EDS community, but to be able to support Dr. Norris. So thank you for having me, Dr. Norris.
I walked up here tonight, and I have Dr. Patel and Susan Chilela to thank for that fact. Because of their dedication to EDS patients like me, I'm now able to walk. And thank you, Dr. Norris, for the important research you're doing. It was so fascinating to see your lab and meet your team, and it's so encouraging to know the progress you're making with all of your work. My name is Severance, and I suffer from hypermobile EDS and as a complication, cranio-cervical instability. This is a condition where the ligaments that hold your head onto your neck become overly lax and cause trauma to the brainstem. This past year has been the toughest and most painful year of my life. It was honestly terrifying. but I now realize that I'm extremely lucky. So many EDS patients are not diagnosed for years, and often decades, or not at all. And that's just not okay. We can do better. We must do better. I was so scared, and I knew it was much more than migraines, but no one had any answers. My world was crumbling. I was vomiting daily, with heating packs on my nauseous stomach 24/7. All my meals had to be brought up to my room, and I truly had no life worth mentioning. I lost the ability to walk. My legs no longer had any coordination, and I couldn't even tell where they were in space. My ankles and knees would just flop over and buckle, and I was wheelchair bound for 5 months. I had to be horizontal 24/7 and even sleep in a neck brace. I couldn't hold my head up at all. I could no longer regulate my body temperature, and I felt like there were always 2 fingers pushing on my throat and a heavy feeling on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I felt so bad that bathing was a near impossibility, and I certainly couldn't wash my hair. Vomiting increased to 2 to 5 times daily, and I remember this one time I was in so much pain that I threw up all over myself, and I laid in it for over 3 hours because I couldn't move. And I was in the pitch black, laying in my own vomit, and my parents couldn't even clean it up because the stimulation and even turning on a flashlight made my migraines and pain accelerate so much that I knew if they tried to clean it up anymore, I would have to go to the hospital. There were times where I just wanted the pain to end, no matter what the consequences. I was hospitalized many times to receive IV morphine, and even that didn't get me out of my pain. I was going downhill so fast, and it was incredibly obvious. I just remember being so scared. But the good news is that Dr. Patel fused my skull to C3 in January. And I'm now able to walk up here today thanks to Dr. Patel's surgical expertise and Susan Chileila's rehabilitation efforts. I'm 6 months post neurosurgery, exactly today actually, and so many of my symptoms are gone or vastly improved. Although I'll never be the same, I've learned to walk again, live again, and plan to return to school in the fall. So many people were trying to help me, but without the recognition of EDS, it was impossible to properly diagnose my condition. I'm so grateful to Dr. Patel, Susan Chileila, and so many others who have prayed for me and taken care of me during this difficult time. Thank you again for allowing me to speak on behalf of this important cause. Identifying EDS more quickly and with greater certainty will improve the lives of so many. Thank you, sir.
But this is a unique thing because here I am, I'm not an expert in EDS, I'm dealing with the spinal issues in EDS, discovering this disease, finding out more and more people suffering from it. And out of the blue, Dr. Norris is working on a gene. I'm like, you know, if I tried to look for a genetic expert, I couldn't find one. And he's right next door. My building's right over there, and he's right here. Where are you at? Right across the street. Where at? MUSC. And his patient comes to me to see me, and that usually these EDS patients fly in. You walk across the street. And then Sydney. Oh my God. When I first saw her, I knew what she had. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what to tell you, Matt. Ask me. I knew what she had. I held her hand and I knew what she had. On the one hand, I felt lucky that she could quickly get to care. But oh my God, what if you were sitting in Kathmandu, Nepal? Or what if you're in Philadelphia, or New York, or Boston? People there don't believe it, my colleagues, you know. But this is an incredible journey because I think it's very important people know about it. And a lot of our neurosurgeons are growingly interested in it. We've got great researchers who are bringing attention to it. We need to find out this genetic thing. We need to early test these people. We need to recognize them. That physical therapists, oh my God, your world. So many people in physical therapy will need to know about this, treat it, recognize it. Mothers of children need to be prepared what to do with their children. Don't go bungee jumping. No, you can't go on the trampoline. No, you cannot definitely skydive. I have a patient saying, oh, can I skydive in 2 weeks? Are you kidding me? No. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to happen. The genetics hopefully leads to early diagnosis. Maybe we can train these children, change their schooling systems. I've had to write so many letters to colleges, Give them the first floor, for God's sake. They're not going to carry their backpack, allow them to wheel backpacks. So many different things and so many different aspects of it. We need an institution. We need to put researchers and clinicians and cardiologists and rheumatologists and all these people. United Kingdom has an EDS institute. We need one here. Professor, we need one here.
And so when Cortney came to the lab, she told you her story earlier, and it was really pretty dumb of me to take this leap, because to jump into a new project, a completely new field, essentially, is a big challenge. And you have to divert funds from one grant to pay for some of these things. And so when we were talking, and she had said that she had Ehlers Danlos syndrome, and I had heard of the vascular type, sort of like most other physicians in here. Initially, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And she said, no, I have the hypermobile type, and she revealed that there was no gene. So that's when I started thinking about it, and we really went into next trying to understand, is this a common problem? I was used to working on common diseases that affect 1 in 40 people. And the initial numbers that I saw were 1 in 5,000, which made it a rare disease. Cortney convinced me that it's not a rare disease, and those numbers are just wrong because they're wrong. And they're more like 1 in 500 or less, or more, less than 1 in 500. And so when you look at the numbers, if you just break down the numbers and see what is the population that this is affecting, it means 15 million people worldwide. That's a lot of people. And it's really become known as the most common disease that you've never heard of. And that's, to me, struck a chord. There's 15 million people. Why aren't people talking about this disease? And then you look at the economic burden. What is this actually costing our society in just the United States? The answer is rare diseases cost $1 trillion in economic burden in the US. $1 trillion. That's amazing. Cardiovascular disease, which everybody's heard of, and coronary artery disease, different aspects of heart disease, costs $550 billion. Okay, so double the amount for a rare disease. When you look at what NIH spends on rare diseases compared to cardiovascular or cancer, cardiovascular and cancer, they spend $10 billion a year. 10 billion. I would argue it's not enough. But when you look at what they spend on EDS, zero. Not a single grant has been funded by NIH on EDS. This makes EDS the most ignored disease in the population. Now, if we break those numbers down for specifically, just HEDS, 43% goes to direct medical costs, 57% goes to non-medical costs, so lost wages, lost productivity, bills that insurance doesn't cover. So that equates to $70,000 a year per person. Extrapolate that over 50 years, $3.5 million per patient with EDS. Multiply that by 15 million people. I don't know how many zeros that is, but it's hundreds of trillions of dollars. That's a lot of burden. that's just financially. That doesn't talk about the pain and suffering that happens. Why does it cost so much? And the answer, I think, is because of the diagnosis, or the failures in diagnosis. The diagnosis being too late. 14 years, as Cortney said earlier, it takes, on average, 14 years to get diagnosed. Not when you're 14 years old, that's not when you're getting diagnosed. It's a 14-year period from your first recognizable symptom. 86% of these people, had they been diagnosed earlier, wouldn't have the severe comorbidities that they developed. So what does this actually mean? What's a true benefit of finding a gene for HEDS? Well, it allows us to screen patients. We can get on, the gene can get on gene panels, we can get patients screened faster. The other really critical thing about finding a gene is now it allows us to develop an animal model. How are you going to study a disease where you don't have a genetic, a way of studying it? You don't have a model to study it. We can take skin biopsies from Cortney and other EDS people in the room and show that there's alterations in collagen. Big deal. We already know that, but we don't know how the disease begins. They already have the disease, and we don't know how it progresses. The third important aspect is it provides a platform for us to develop therapies. And this is really critical. Without this model, the future for developing treatments is really pretty limited. So really, how do we make these discoveries? There's two simple answers: people and money. It's that simple. That's how you make discoveries. You need people in the lab, and you need money to pay these people and money to buy the supplies. How are we going to raise awareness? You can do social media all you want, but really it has to come from the ground level. And so this year we started an intern program and had a national call. We were going to hire, or we're going to bring in 4 talented people. We had 2 requirements. One was that you needed to want to pursue a clinical or research career in connective tissue diseases with focus on Ehlers Danlos syndrome. Seems like very specific criteria. The second was that you had to have EDS yourself. We found that when we had established our registry, that a lot of these people were young and in college. And we figured there's got to be people who want to go into science and learn about their disease. And so we did that. We had a national call. We had a lot of applications, and from that we brought in 4 students with EDS who could work on EDS. And if they could stand up. So we're starting with 4. And we chose these 4, not only because they're smart and they have good grades and they have EDS, but because they each wanted to do something different in the clinical world. They wanted to do either a PhD or an MD PhD or nursing or genetic counseling. We didn't want 4 people doing a PhD and being like me, because then you're really not spreading the knowledge very much. But with 4 different types of careers. Now, when they graduate, they will be teaching 200 people in their med school, 200 people in their nursing school. And they're going to teach them about EDS. From there on, it will grow, and we'll have more clinical knowledge out there. So we can raise awareness by starting there. When I switch, and you try in science, you try not to really switch paths very often. You need to stay focused. But I thought, we're switching over into this connective tissue disease, and we need to publish a position paper. And so Cortney wrote a very nice review. This was just a literature review with some members of the audience are co-authors on this paper. And it was published about 9 months ago. And I got a call about a month and a half, 2 months ago from the chief editor of Developmental Dynamics. This is one of the top developmental biology journals in the country, or in the world. And said, hey, we really want you to write another paper. Which is weird, getting a call from the chief editor soliciting another paper. You get them from predatory journals, but not really from well-respected journals. And I said, oh, yeah, sure, that's fine. We're happy to do that. But why are you asking? He's like, well, because your paper on Ehlers Danlos syndrome just became the most downloaded article in our journal's 120-year history. 15,000 downloads in the last 6 months. That's really incredible. So those with EDS are motivated and want solutions. They want doctors to know what they have and be better educated on it. We're trying to do that. Without research, the future is challenging for this disease. So, I asked the question, what if you could help? As Dr. Patel ended with, there's no reason that we can't have MUSC be a destination center. We need places in this country that provide options, that provide complete clinical care, where people don't have to go from one state to another, where you can pair clinicians with physicians and scientists to have diagnostic tools, genetic tools, and see all the clinical care that you need, all the specialists that it requires to see these patients and treat these patients. So I'm asking again, what if you could help? Would you? I'd like my lab, almost made it. my lab to stand up and this is really, I do nothing but sit in my office and think and write, but these guys in the back here, please, everybody stand up. These are the people who make it happen. And so we really want to try to support their graduate education and the next phases of their career. Thank you all for coming, and we could all use your support. Thank you.